How's it going, y'all? Welcome in to another episode of Nasty Bunch and Beyond. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm rejoined by my co-host, Drew Johnson. You can find us both on X at Dalton_Trigg and at Coach Drew 33. And as a reminder, before we get started, if any of you want a discount on some Southern Miss merch, go to thetopmerch.shopify.com and use our promo code NastyBunchPod to get 20% off your entire purchase. Holidays are coming. Christmas is right here, a few weeks away. So, if you have any USM fans, you want to get some nice merch, be sure to go over there and use that promo code and get a nice discount. DJ, um, this is not how I thought we were going to come back and record. We actually weren't going to record at all this week because I'm in the middle of a home improvement project. My wife and I, we've been working on a home office slash podcast studio in the spare room that we've had, and we've been wanting to do it forever. Finally getting around to it. So, that's probably going to be finished next week. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to wait because, not in the conference championship. We'll have some time before the bowl game comes. It'll be fine. Well, then I wake up this morning to news circulating on Twitter that Coach Huff has reportedly accepted the head coaching job at Memphis. So nothing has been made official yet, but when multiple credible reporters are reporting something like that, it's probably true, and it's just a matter of when the ink dries, because it's just one of those things. If one random person is saying it, you may brush it off and go about your day. But when several people are reporting like what happened today, it's true. Coach Huff is gone. It's unfortunate, but we knew this was a possibility. We've talked about it on this pod for the past several weeks, and we said if Coach Huff does leave, that means that we were winning and that we, were in a better situation than what he inherited. And that's exactly what happened. Like, you can say what you want to about the players he brought over from Marshall, Braylon Braxton being, a proven quarterback that won the Sun Belt Championship game MVP last year with Marshall, all that stuff. You can say all that, but I mean, the facts are the facts. He inherited a 1-11 program from last year, turned it into a 7-5 program this year, making a bowl game, had a very real chance at making the conference championship game before things imploded in the last 3 games of the season. And it was impressive enough of a turnaround that now he has a step up job wise as far as, a school that has more resources. I have heard, and this isn't confirmed, I don't know this for sure. I have heard that, his son plays travel basketball. Like, I don't know if it's AAU or whatever it is, but he's playing like some kind of basketball in Memphis. I think that's what I've heard. And again, I don't want people to run with that. I'm just saying, that's what I've heard. So, if that's the case and it's a convenience thing and you're getting more money and the school has more resources and you're in a bigger conference, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. So you can't be mad at Huff for making a decision that benefits him and his family, but it is kind of disappointing that it's just 1 year of Coach Huff in Hattiesburg and now he's gone. But I'm very appreciative of everything he has done for the university. I love his enthusiasm. I love his optimism. He did exactly what he was hired to do, and that was to turn a program that was dead in the water the last couple of years into something respectable. And I can't thank him enough for that. He's been a great asset for a year uh, to Golden Eagle Nation. So look, coaches come and go, but Southern Miss is forever. I mean, we're gonna it hurts, it stings right now, but we're gonna get over this. And I think, it's not one of those things where, Marshall, they kind of felt like the rug was pulled underneath them. I don't know why, because I don't think Marshall, the administration wanted to keep Huff, but somehow the fans think the rug was pulled out from underneath them when he left Marshall. That wasn't the case here. We knew this was a possibility. We hoped it would go at least one more year before we got here. It didn't, And now we got to see what Jeremy McClain does with this next hire, because it's an important one, DJ. I mean, it's going to determine a lot for the next couple years who this next hire is. But enough rambling from me. What are your thoughts on Huff reportedly leaving Southern Miss for Memphis?
Again, it's like you said, you can't be overly mad at him because I mean, I've heard, or I've read at least some speculation on what his contract's going to be, but more importantly, I've read what sort of NIL he's going to be working with, and with FedEx being intimately involved with Memphis athletics, it's a pretty good deal, especially at that level. It's a pretty good deal. I know that the AAC and the Sun Belt are pretty comparable in terms of competition, but you have schools in that conference with a little bit more money, and that usually means in this day and age a little bit better football and a little bit more pull in terms of possibly making the big football dance. So
Look at Tulane.
exactly, you're seeing it right now. So it's really hard for me to fault him because this is the nature of the business. Now, what I do want to say is this upcoming hire, I think, is actually more important than the hire that came before him. Okay, I think this hire is actually more important than the Huff hire.
I agree,
We
100%.
knew that Huff was only going to be here for a max 2 years. Okay, what came after was going to be what was most important, and we. I really hope that our athletic department and our athletic director quickly moved on from this and is immediately looking right now. And of course, we have some ideas as to who we'd like to see Southern Miss go after. Ed Ogeron would be a lot of fun.
It'd be so much fun. Look,
So much fun. We wouldn't be able to understand a word he says. It would be great.
if we were able to get that interview, that would be incredible. Like you said, nobody would understand what's going on, but I
Oh,
would. It
it'd be
would be
great.
awesome.
It'd be
It'd be
great.
awesome. I'd turn it into one of those, old clips that people used to make with like the auto tune where it's like on an infinite loop. And, it'd be awesome.
We'd have
I'd
to have
make some.
subtitles at the bottom, dude.
Yeah, just our own made up subtitles for him. But
Oh my gosh.
look, in all seriousness, that's probably not going to happen. But there have been several reports that Coach O has been, wanting to get back into football, wanting to coach again. And I saw somebody say that. I haven't looked it up to confirm it, but supposedly, like his buyout with LSU, he's got this month to go before that's completely paid in full. Now I don't know why that would affect him being able to sign another coaching job or not. But
I can tell you why, but
yeah, but I mean if at the very least it would be cool for Jeremy McClain to go out and make Coach O tell you no.
yeah.
You can say what you want about, Coach O and, the offense he runs and all these other things. The man can recruit. He has so many connections. Like, look, I get it. If he had come back to LSU, which we'll talk a little bit about that Lane Kiffin drama because we haven't touched on that since the last time we were on here. But look, if he had gone back to LSU, it would have probably been very average for him because you don't have a Joe Burrow anymore.
Mm-mm.
But look, you come to a smaller school, a smaller conference like Southern Miss and South Mississippi with your recruiting connections and everything. Man, that would be awesome. I could totally see him turning us into a mid-major powerhouse. So
I could totally see him and Kane Break throwing a tri-delt mixer on
I
at his
saw,
personal
I,
match. You see that tweet?
I saw that. That was hilarious. Look,
I
it's
retweeted it, but God, we'd have the
hey,
Ogeron files. Do they have the Lane Kiffin files? We would have the Ogeron files. It'd be great.
yeah, Coach O. Look, he'd be a fun guy. I mean, he'd be full steam ahead. And he's in his mid 60s, and I get it. I get why people may want to go another direction, or maybe not even try. I think it would be great, and I think he's at a point in his career where he's made a bunch of money. He's been at the top of the mountaintop with LSU, winning a national championship. He's been out of football for the last couple of years, and he's probably just itching to get back in. And I don't know at what level he's expecting, but like I said, I think he could come back and take a job, like Southern Miss, and do a very, very good job, and kind of build momentum for something else if he wanted it, in the latter part of his career. So that's one name. Another name, DJ, that I am pretty high on. He was one of the finalists for Memphis between Huff and this guy, but Kennesaw State's head coach Jerry Mack. I
Hmm.
would love for us to at least make a call to him and see what's going on, because Kennesaw State, it was a similar situation to us, but they actually finished the year strong and completed the job. Unlike us, they were 2-10 last year, and they turned it around, and I think they ended up being 10-3 after they just won the Conference USA championship. So he was getting an interview from Memphis, and Memphis ended up going with Huff instead. There were reports that Huff was interviewing for Tulane too. And for some reason, Tulane didn't decide to hire him. I think that's going to be a mistake for Memphis going forward, since they lost John Summerall to Florida. I think they should have hired Huff. So we'll see what happens. And then Tulane turned their attention to LSU's defensive coordinator. His last name's Baker. I
Hmm.
forgot his first name, but anyway, they were trying to hire him. Well, he's staying with LSU now, and so now it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to hire Will Hall? Um, because he's on the staff as some kind of position player, and I don't know what they're going to do now. So we'll see. But anyway, my point was, Kennesaw State's coach Jerry Mack, he was in the running to get that Memphis job. He didn't get it. Do you reach out to him and offer him the Huff deal? Because obviously, he'd be making more than he is at Kennesaw State right now. He's, proven he can take a program that wasn't very good the year before, turn them into something better, and winning a Conference USA championship. I like the idea of Jerry Mack too. What do you think?
You know, it would be a lot like the Huff hire. It would be very similar. You're going to bring in a guy who had success elsewhere and bring him to, a level that is a little bit, higher than what he was at. But here's what we need to focus on, guys, and this may piss some people off. We want a coach who wants to be on the first train out of Hattiesburg. Does that make sense?
That's right.
You want a coach who is motivated to get the hell out of Hattiesburg. And I'll tell you why, because that type of motivation leads you to winning. If you really want Southern Miss football to be at an all-time high, you're going to have to play this carousel, and you're going to have to constantly hire people who will win. Because at our level, guys, it's unfortunate, but it's true. At our level, we're going to be used as a stepping stone. So why not get as much out of each step as we possibly can, right?
Yeah.
It's
This
sad,
is
but it's true.
this is the college football landscape now.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, DJ, if if you make those kind of hires, if you hit on those kind of hires consecutively, 2, 3 in a row, and you string together some really successful seasons, that could change everything for you.
It could.
You get enough consistency within your program to where it's not just relying on one coach, and you've shown that, hey, you can make the successful hire no matter who it is that's leaving you, using you as a stepping stone. That's something that can really inject some energy into the fan base, into
Really.
donors, and to all that kind of stuff. And then next thing you know, maybe you get a chance to go to the American Conference later down the line or something like that. So you don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think you need to play it conservatively, because we have seen in the past what that leads to. It's just the fact that when we're hiring a football coach from the outside, things tend to go better unless it's Ellis Johnson. that was the outlier.
Mhm.
So, I've seen some people, and I even kind of joked about this earlier. Hugh Freeze. Now, look, I think Hugh Freeze would do fine in the Sun Belt. I think he's a Southern Miss alum. I think he'd do fine here. But there's just something about the last time we hired somebody that was previously at Auburn, it was Ellis Johnson, and that did not go well at all. So I've got I've got some reservations with that one. But look, it's nothing against Blake Anderson. I love Blake Anderson. I think if back in 2011 when Fedora left, I was like, this is the guy. Like, don't let him leave. I don't know why they chose to do that, but they did, and they hired Ellis Johnson. It was terrible, and the program was cursed for the
Mhm.
next several years until they got Todd Monken. But it's a different time now. Now it's 2025, about to be 2026. It's not the same as back then, and you need some new blood. You need some new energy in the building now. So, and I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I don't know how the play calling duties were split up for the football team. I mean, for the offense down the last, let's see, what, 3 games, 3.5 games of the season. Like, I don't know how the play calling was split up, but it wasn't great. Like, it was, and I get it. Braylon Braxton was hurt. You had some guys banged up, but there were several uh, head scratching calls on offense that just if we're being honest, it put them behind. So that's something you got to think about. And look, some guys, and I don't know. I mean, you've seen it with Blake Anderson's head coaching record previously. Some guys are just better as coordinators than they are as head coaches, and that's not a knock on them. It's just the facts. Take Todd Monken for example. He was a fine head coach at Southern, and we got to a Conference USA championship with him. Had a couple of great seasons with him. But then he went to Georgia as their offensive coordinator and won 2 national championships.
Mhm.
And now he's doing big things in the NFL with the Baltimore Ravens and has Lamar Jackson as his quarterback. So, he that's just proof right there. It's like, yeah, he was a fine head coach and he showed that, he's able to handle all that a little bit. But when it comes down to it, he is an offensive coordinator. That is what he excels at. And I just don't know if Blake Anderson is the answer um, for head coach of this team. So, and I might be wrong. Look, obviously I was wrong about how we came out for that last game against Troy. Um, last weekend. I just in my mind there was no way that this team was going to lay an egg 3 weeks in a row. Especially with Braxton having another week to prepare and all that. But man, it was bad. I mean, they showed some life there toward the end, but ended up losing to Troy. Troy went to the Sun Belt Championship to play James Madison. Played James Madison pretty dang good up to the
Mhm.
end, and then ultimately got stomped there in the final minutes. So James Madison wins the Sun Belt. No use in crying over spilled milk, but all that to say, I could be wrong about this. They could hire Blake Anderson, and he might be awesome. And he could be one of those guys that stays for several years and is awesome. But I don't know, man. I just look at the track record, and I think this needs to be an outside hire. And I would put Jerry Mack at the top of my list right now. Top of my realistic list. Like I said, look, I would love for Coach O.
Coach Rod, top of the
I
list.
would love for that to be a possibility, to get involved. But I I just don't know. I don't know how realistic that is. Like, what are his goals? Because he's made the money,
It's a
he's won
party.
at the highest level. What does he want to do? Is the question. So
Party.
well, well, we may not be we may not be the best destination for him then, if that's the case.
Oh, I don't know, Dalton. I
Well,
think
I mean, just I'm just comparing, to what he's been through at LSU.
oh, well, that's true. Ellis and Ole Miss, but in Southern, it's a little bit more low key. Maybe it won't get in the press so bad as it did at those SEC schools. I don't know. It probably would, but it'd still be great. We'd laugh. It'd be hilarious. Um, but going back to that, you mentioning just how we had that collapse at the end of this year. Um, I think that Braxton's injury was probably much more serious than we were led to believe, and what the press was led to believe. I think that he was way more hurt than people actually realize. I also have to wonder, though. Me, I'm a really big conspiracy theory guy. Do you think that Coach Huff knew he was leaving?
That's a good question. That's
Do
a
you
good question.
think players knew he was leaving?
It very well could be the case. And look, I went back through my text to look at this, and I text a couple people. One of my buddies, he covers several Texas college. He covers the Texas Longhorns, Texas A&M, Baylor, all those teams out there for Sports Illustrated. And I was talking to him on, let's see, it was November 22nd. So what, a little over 2 weeks ago. And I was like, man, I don't know what has happened to this football team. This does not look like the team that started 7-2. It was during that Texas State uh, blowout. No, it was South Alabama, the first
Mhm.
half of that game, I think. But I was like, man, this doesn't look like the same team. I have no idea what's going on. I mean, I know Braxton got hurt, but still, I mean, it shouldn't derail the defense like this,
Yeah.
that bad. The overall team performance. And he was just like, what if the coach is leaving? And what if they found out? And at the time, I was like, I mean, I kind of brushed it off, but in the back of my mind, I kept thinking like, maybe that's true. Maybe somebody got a whiff of it and spread it, and then team morale was down because of that. So it very well could be the case. Now, with that being said, an MCL sprain is nothing to play around with. Like
Ooh.
that's tough. Depending on the grade, it is like Braxton. You could tell he could not use his legs the same way he could before he got hurt in that first half against Arkansas State. So, I'm not downplaying that. That was a big factor in how things turned out. But, you're right. I mean, you may call it a conspiracy theory, but I don't think it's too far fetched. I think that very well could have been the case.
Well, I'll tell you this: Memphis ain't that far from Southern Miss. Geographically speaking, I guarantee you, kids from from Southern Miss know kids from Memphis. Guarantee you that. I also think that there's a slight chance that maybe they know his son, who is in Memphis playing basketball. I
Maybe
don't know.
so.
I don't know. I will say this though. Memphis was not happy with their previous head coach. He won a bunch of games or whatever, but he could never get it done as far as, catapulting them into conference championship or anything like that. And they were kind of getting fed up with him. I knew that.
Well, look,
Um,
that's part of the reason. And I know online is not real life, and there's they say Twitter is not real life, so
it's
don't
not.
get too caught up in that and Eagle post on Facebook.
Oh God.
A lot. I mean, I get it. A lot of those people are actually real people behind a keyboard, but it's not people. Like people aren't going to act like how they do online in person. So don't get caught up in all that. But with that being said, I was looking at how Memphis fans were reacting to the Huff news. They're not taking it very well. It's a very underwhelming reaction, and part of the reason for that is they're looking at Huff's record against teams over 500, and it's not very good. It's very similar to the coach that just left them. So
Silverfield, I think was his name.
right, yeah, I went to Arkansas. So
Mhm.
Huff still has something to prove. And maybe he was thinking, because we talked about this before. Well, I think Huff is a good coach. I think he's a good recruiter. I think he's a good motivator. Um, you do kind of wonder, how much of the Marshall success may have been. And I'm not saying he wouldn't have done good. I'm just saying, like, do they win the Sun Belt championship game without Braylon Braxton? Because Braylon Braxton was so good. and he was healthy. We saw what happened to us this year when Braylon Braxton was not healthy at the end of the season and how it ended. And Braylon Braxton's a senior. So, you're starting over with somebody different next year. So if you're Coach Huff, if I'm not saying he would doubt himself or anything. I'm just saying if you're in his shoes and it's like, okay, I'm about to have to restart with a brand new quarterback, do you want to do that at at Southern Miss where you've only spent one season and it just ended on a sour note? Or do you want to do that in Memphis, with a brand new contract and more resources, and, starting from scratch? And then, the fan base, it doesn't seem like they have very high expectations from the get go. So, if he doesn't do as great starting out, it's not like they're expecting him to do that. So, if you're looking at it from that perspective, you can kind of see why it would make sense. But, I think Coach Huff is a great coach. I think he'll do just fine
Mm-hmm.
with the resources he had. Because I mean, Memphis, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think they've got like he's going to have at least 4 to 5 times more NIL um, budget to work with than what he was, this past year.
And that's just what was reported. But also, I kind of wonder if Memphis, going back to the connection between his kid and Memphis, I wonder if officials from Memphis athletics were not already in contact with him midway through the season when things started to sour with Silverfield. I wonder if Huff wasn't on their list already because of that relationship.
You never know. I mean, look, this is how college football is. I'm sure teams are talking. Look, LSU could have very well been talking to Lane Kiffin during that game that they were playing in Oxford. LSU versus Ole Miss earlier this season, where Ole Miss beat LSU. They very well could have been talking to Kiffin at that point
Yep.
during the season. So I mean, you never know. I mean, it could be the case. And look, the whole thing about the his kid playing basketball in Memphis and all that. Again, that's not like something confirmed or that's just rumor. That's something that I heard somebody say, and we're just talking about. So I mean, I'm not. We don't even know if that's the case, but I'm just saying it would make a lot of sense.
Because
And
if he played, so I don't know anything about this guy, so don't take this as law. But if he played, on an AAU circuit, like let's say EYBL, with a Memphis team, before they were the Bluff City Legends, they were Team Penny, and you're out of your mind if you don't think Penny Hardaway still has something to do with that program. Where does Penny Hardaway
yeah,
coach? You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? You see where I'm
yeah,
getting?
yeah,
So
all
that's
connected.
the connection that I'm getting at.
Yeah. Speaking of Memphis and basketball, you and I had some great times at Memphis basketball camp back in the
Oh
day.
God,
Your great grandma's place it was your great grandma's place,
yeah, it
right?
was. It was Nana's
Yeah.
house. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah, that
really
was
nice.
awesome. And I'll
Germantown.
never
Yeah.
forget, I'll never forget you taking a dunk to the face. I'm not gonna explain exactly what happened because that
Well,
would
I
be
will. I'll give you a play-by-play,
yeah,
guys. I'm gonna
good.
put this way. I'll give you a play-by-play. So Dalton had this dude on his team that was like 6'5". He was a Division I player. And me, I was in 8th grade, was about 5'10", pretty round, not very athletic, but I had a mean streak and a bad attitude. Unfortunately, those things did not save me. And the coach of my coach was I don't remember who your coach was, but my coach was Jeremy Hunt, who played for the Tigers for years. I'm pretty sure he was on that team. He was on the team that went to the Elite Eight the year before Derrick Rose got there. I'm pretty sure he
Pretty
was.
sure my coach was Joey Dorsey, if I'm not
Was it Joey
mistaken.
Dorsey?
I think it was.
It may have been. I don't know. But anyway, so we
Anyway.
it was a fast break. We turned the ball over. I was still trailing, and so the guy's name was Eugene Johnson. I will never forget this person's name because once this is seared into your head, you know. Anyway, he gets it on the fast break. Again, 6'5", athletic. I don't know what 8th grade Drew is thinking, but by God, we're beating him to the rim. And I beat him to the spot. I was there first, but it didn't
he
matter.
he Michael Jordan logoed you, is what
It
he
was
did.
so bad. So I went up with him. and he went up, and then I kept going up, and I'm like, this isn't right. I can't jump this high. But we keep going up because I guess his forearm hooked under mine, and so I kept going up with him. And then he spiked it on top of my head, literally through the rim, off my head, threw me into the freaking wall, which, mind you, is like, I don't know, 10 yards, 15 yards behind the goal. It was like a cartoon. I literally got bounced into the wall. I was in shock for about 5 seconds. Coach Hunt was yelling on the sideline, "You okay?" I looked and I said, "No."
Oh, I'll never forget that. That was one of the great. I wish, and that was before, I don't think they recorded any of that stuff at the
Thank
camps.
God.
That would have
God.
been so cool. I
Ugh.
for weeks I kept asking your pawpaw. I was like, "Hey, you think you can look and or ask somebody and see if they got it on camera or something?" And we never could get it, but it was hilarious. I've never seen anything like
So
that before, and
bad.
I'm just glad that dude was on my team. So,
Dude, he was so good. He was so
but
good. I think he ended up playing at like, I don't know, some SWAC school or something, but he was the real deal.
it's crazy looking back. And I texted you about this earlier today, but and I get it. I get that Memphis, even when they were in our same conference, when we were in Conference USA, they were still, as far as like resources and stuff, kind of, a notch ahead. But looking back, it's like it's just kind of sad seeing where their programs are versus ours.
Mhm.
Um, just the growth and where that, they continued to grow. They got out of Conference USA, went to the American Conference, and they're thriving. And we finally got out of Conference USA. We're in the Sun Belt, but it's two different trajectories, in my opinion, just from an overall athletics perspective. So,
Well, look who's
that's
funding
kind
it.
of it's kind of sad because we used to be big rivals with Memphis, and it was always fun when those two teams got together. And I hope that we can get back to that point one day. It's going to be tough with how things are in college athletics these days, but again, that's why you want to make the right hire and keep this momentum going. And that's why this next hire for football is so important, because you cannot get rid of the momentum. You got to continue it. You cannot go back to what you were the 2 years prior to this season. You got to make the right hire and you got to continue the momentum. If you don't string together several seasons like this and get fan interest, it doesn't matter to the diehards. Like I'm a season ticket holder. I
Mhm.
go to the football games, the basketball games, the baseball games. I go to all of it. I love Southern Miss. It's ingrained in me. I enjoy the games. Even during the 1-11 and 3-9 football seasons the last 2 years, I went to those games. There were some that I didn't because I got tired of it toward the end of the season and you kind of knew how it was going to go.
Mhm.
But I'm still going to buy the season tickets and go. I get that there are people who aren't that into it. And you're going to have to, I'm not wagging my finger at people who are like that. It's just a fact. You have a portion of the fan base that isn't going to come back fully until you do something to prove like we're back.
Mhm.
So you got to continue the momentum and you got to get people back on board. And then once you do that for so many years consecutively, then you can have a conversation about taking that next step. Maybe improving all your facilities, maybe going to a different conference and, growing and doing something bigger than what you're currently doing. So that's I'll get off my soapbox, but that's where I'm at right now.
Well, you're absolutely right. Success breeds income, and income breeds improvement. It's that simple. If you want to make money, you got to win. How do you win? You keep making key hires. And I would say that this next hire is the most important hire of Jeremy McClain's career.
I agree.
I would say that.
100%. 100%. And I hope they don't take the safe route. I mean,
It ain't safe. It ain't safe. It ain't safe. You got to take
it's
a swing.
not.
You got to
It's
take a
not.
swing.
You have to, and I hope they. And the thing is, you got to make the right hire, and you got to do it kind of quick
Yep.
too. I mean, you don't want this to drag on because you've already had early signing day. You're going to have the transfer portal stuff coming up. Um, the end of the season is upon us. You got to get a head start on next season now. So I mean, it's one of those things where you have to make the right hire, and you got to be pretty efficient with your time too, and go ahead and get it done if possible, so you can put yourself in a better position for next season.
Well,
So it's look, it's a situation. I wouldn't want to be in Jeremy McClain's shoes because it's going to be tough. But he showed last year that he can do it. I don't think any of us expected him to go steal Coach Huff from Marshall at the time. But he's proven that he can be aggressive and do something like that. So we'll see where he goes with this.
well, I'll say this, and you sat on your soapbox. I'm about to take a big old seat on mine. This crap needs to stop with poaching coaches before bowl games or before conference championships even. This needs to stop. So we need to move. We can't. We need to enlist some kind of rule where players and coaches cannot leave their respective schools until after bowl season.
And
Schools
that is
can't even
one
talk.
hundred. That is 100% an NCAA problem too. They need to set those boundaries.
Well, God help us all because the NCAA doesn't do anything to help coaches or athletes. Period.
Yep.
In the discussion. I've worked under them. They don't do it. They're just going to kick the can down the street. As long as they're making money, they don't care. And that's Drew's soapbox.
Which is the case with a lot of corporate America. So
Yeah.
but yeah, look, I agree. I think I don't think they care too much about it. I think they enjoy even if it's negative attention. Some people like attention, whether it's positive or negative. And with all the Lane Kiffin stuff that happened, and look, it's like, okay, so with Lane Kiffin, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Ooh,
Let's
boy.
talk about that.
We talk about the Kiffin files because those are fun too.
Yeah, so let's talk about Lane Kiffin. Everybody was all the Ole Miss people were mad about. I'd feel worse for Ole Miss if they'd if they'd play us in football,
I don't feel bad for him. I
which they
don't,
haven't done in over 40 years. So I mean, I didn't feel bad for them at the time. I don't expect them to feel bad for us either. But they were so mad that Kiffin left, and I get it. Kiffin did not handle that professionally. My case or my reasoning for all this is, say what you want about Lane Kiffin and how good the Ole Miss job was, and he had raised the bar as high as he did. They were 11-1 in the regular season. They didn't make the SEC championship, but they are going to the college football playoff. And he leaves, and everybody's so mad about it. And I'm just like, look, he did what's best for his family. He thought LSU was the better situation. He even said in an interview, he said, it may not be. He said, this may not turn out right. But he said that he thought that that was the better situation for him. He's going to be getting, I don't know. People say that Ole Miss was offering the same money. I don't think it was. It was close, but it was not the same. It definitely wasn't the same NIL budget. I know
no,
that.
no way. No way.
So the NIL budget was way more. So you take that into consideration. You take into consideration the facilities. Ole Miss has some good facilities. They're not LSU facilities. You take into account the history of it. Both programs. It's no comparison what LSU has done over the years compared to Ole Miss. So look, it's a better job. And I told a bunch of people, soon as that LSU job came open and Brian Kelly was fired, I was like, Lane Kiffin's going to go to LSU.
Yep.
That automatically became the best job opening in college football, and you don't turn that down. And I'm sure he went to Nick Saban for advice, and I'm sure Nick Saban told him the same exact thing, because Nick Saban has said that the biggest regret of his career was leaving LSU and going to the NFL. He wished he would have stayed there, and I'm sure he passed along that advice from his perspective, and that's how it was. So again, I'm not saying that Lane Kiffin was right in how he handled everything, and I get that leaving a team, especially after you've had the season that you've had at that point in time, I get that that's tough. But the Ole Miss administration could have also just let him finish out the year and then leave. And I understand why they wouldn't want to do that too. It was just a tough situation. And what it comes down to again is the NCAA and their schedule, and putting boundaries around all this. Because if you have it to where you can't hire a new coach while the season is going on, then we don't have to worry about any of this. Like,
Right.
you don't have to put it all on the coach. You don't have to put it all on the administration. You just finish out the season, and it is what it is. And it also made things complicated too because he was in the last year. Like Kiffin was, he was in the last year of his contract, and Ole Miss was trying their best to get him to sign an extension, and he wasn't signing it, which should have been your first
Mhm.
hint, several weeks ago. But uh, anyway, I mean, it's just a bunch of drama, and I I thought it was. I saw a tweet the other day, DJ, that said Lane Kiffin has already signed more 5-star recruits in the past 5 days than he did in 6 years at Ole Miss, and I was like, that right there. I mean, that's it right there. That's one of the big reasons
It's the
right
difference
there. So
between a good SEC program and a blue blood. Let's be honest. And
yeah,
LSU, yeah, they're a blue blood. That's a blue blood program. Always has been. Always will be. Even
it
in
is.
down years, it's still a blue blood program, and they're going to be able to pull talent just based off of that,
Yeah, and I
regardless of
mean,
who the
look,
coach is.
if I was an Ole Miss fan and I was in their shoes, I would be so mad too. Like I get it, emotions are high. You're having the best season you've ever had ever, and your coach leaves. I would be mad too. So I empathize with that. But I'm just saying, like when you look at the details and when you look at the fine print of everything, I mean, it's pretty obvious why it happened. So it is what it is. I just, again, I'm not going to feel too sorry for them until they start agreeing to play us in football again because they've been very petty for 40. I think it's 41 years now since we've played Ole Miss in football. At least Mississippi State will come to the negotiating table and play us in football a few times every couple years. So
I won't feel sorry for them if they play us twice a year. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't care. But what's interesting to me about all that
that's the
was
correct take, by the way.
do what
I said that's the correct take too, by the way. I wouldn't either, but I'm just
I
I'm
hate
trying
Ole.
to make it sound nice.
Well, I hate Ole Miss, so I hate Ole Miss. Anyway, so um, what's super interesting to me though about that whole situation were the reports that were coming out about the negotiations between Lane and the Ole Miss brass, and he, he was telling them, if you don't let me coach this game, I'm going to pack up everything, everyone, players, coaches, everybody, and we're just going to go straight to LSU. Unreal, man. Unreal cojones on that guy. Like, just
Gangster.
wow. Wow. I mean, just he may as well have just lit up a cigar in the middle of dude's living room. I mean, why not? And
No,
it
and
really it reminded me a lot of. Do you remember when John Calipari left Memphis and he
I
was
do.
at the negotiating table with them, basically telling them like what players he would leave behind for him or whatever, like treating people as commodities. That I don't know. That just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And Calipari is a great coach. Kiffin's a great coach. But that whole notion of, well, I'll give you him. I mean, we're kind of not looking at these people like human beings anymore. We're really kind of teetering on some questionable ethics here. But,
Yeah.
it's Lane Kiffin. Ethics, I dare say, probably aren't even in the stratosphere as far
Which
as what
look, people are like, oh, he won't last 2 years. I think he's a perfect fit for Baton Rouge, and
almost two.
that's it's almost too perfect the fit
Yeah.
in my not just from a football perspective, but like his personality and everything. He is perfect for Baton Rouge. I'm telling you right now, he is going to be wildly successful down there. I think.
He is every bit as wily as any Cajun down there, man. He's I mean, have you looked at these stories coming out of Ole Miss, coming from the sorority houses about him?
There's many.
Crazy, crazy. The hot yoga
And,
stories.
and look, and you gotta. It's one of those things where it's like you have to take it with a grain of salt because you do have a bunch of scorned fans in that fan base. So it's like, what's
Yeah,
real? What's
some
fabricated
of
to
these
make?
text messages look real, dude. Like some of these look 100% real. And if you look at it from text message to text message, the writing style is all the same. It's a little suspicious to me.
Yeah.
Mm, I don't
Yeah.
know. We
It's
saw
not.
Ogeron do something similar.
Yeah, it's not great. And usually when when you get caught in stuff like that and you're especially a big time football coach, things don't end well for you. But again, that's why I say in Baton Rouge, yeah, as long as he's winning games, and I'm not saying this is the right way to handle it, but you know how these SEC schools are, DJ. If as long as he's winning games, nobody's going to say anything to him.
Yeah,
And
Lou
that's
Holtz.
that's that's not the way that stuff like that should be handled, but that's just how they and that's the thing, with the old Miss stuff too. Like a lot of these stories coming out now, and it's just like, wait, so you were going to cover all this up as
If
long
you
as
kept winning, if you
as
kept
long as
winning,
he signed the extension with you
yep.
and stayed at Ole Miss, you weren't going to say anything about it. But
Nah, if
now
he's
that he's
winning,
left,
baby.
you're telling, what does that say about you?
It says that our moral compass points directly to the win loss column. But anyway, another notion on that, them potentially covering things up. Lou Holt said something one time. It was in a college game day. It was back whenever I was a kid, but it's always stuck with me. It went something like, oh gosh, if you win, your enemies can't hurt you, but if you lose, your friends can't help you. And that is,
True.
I don't think anything more truthful has ever been said about the coaching profession, especially today. And he said this 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. It's
So
true.
it
And look,
is.
and again, I'm very grateful for what Coach Huff did for this program. Most fun I've had watching Southern Miss football in many years. The most fun I've had watching a Southern Miss football game over the last several years was in 2022 during that Lending Tree Bowl in Mobile, where
Mhm.
Frank Gore Jr. popped off for almost 330 rushing yards, and we beat Rice 38-24.
He's a
That
beast.
he was, and now he's with the Buffalo Bills, I believe. So,
Mhm.
I'm hoping he gets a shot at doing something special in the next couple of years. But
God love him for
um,
living in Buffalo. Jesus Christ. That's like you walk outside and you're a damn snowman. It's
yeah,
so cold there.
but still, that again, that's 3 years that I can think of where I have not had as good of a time watching Southern Miss football than I have this year. So I'm grateful to Coach Huff. I'm thankful that he chose to leave Marshall even after winning a conference championship and coming to Hattiesburg and turning this program around. And again, now it's up to the administration. Now it's up to Jeremy McClain and Joe Paul and the entire administration on making the right hire again. And if you do that, if you keep this momentum going, I think we're going to have the same vibes going into next season. And then we'll see how the recruit, depending on who you get, is going to
Yep.
determine how this next recruiting class is going to shape up. And it also could depending on who you're getting, where they're coming from, it could shape how your transfer portal class looks. So it's important, and I think it's going to be. I have faith in them to make the right hire, and I hope they do it quickly so we can get the ball rolling on this. But I again, I thought that I also thought that the football team wouldn't have three straight letdowns. DJ, I swore we were going to be playing in the Sun Belt Championship game, and I couldn't believe it. Watching that game with Ryan, we were wearing those awesome all gold uniforms with the black numbers instead of the white numbers. I had a
Looking
feeling it was
sharp.
gonna be great. And then the first possession, I think it was a three and out, and then there was a shanked punt that barely got to the 50-yard line. I was like, okay, so it's gonna be one of those type of
Yeah.
days. it was rough, but
It's just, I mean, we just kind of played like a deflated balloon. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like something was going on that we weren't privy to. And that's what, brings us back to what we were talking about previously. Did the kids know something? What was there something going on behind the scene? Did Coach Up already know he was going somewhere? Again, we're conspiracy theorists. Don't
Very
take
well
what
could
we
have been the
say
case.
with a grain of salt, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like what you say, reading in between the lines. It's kind of what I'm reading in between the lines there.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. I mean, it's like I said, we didn't plan on doing this today, but when something like that happens, you gotta you gotta throw down and talk about it because we've done this several times with our math stuff over the years too. It's like one minute you're thinking, oh, I'm not gonna record until next week or something. The next minute, Luka Doncic is getting traded to the Lakers, and you're freaking out at past midnight and having to do something about it. So, uh,
I was
and
grateful that I
but
was already asleep when that news broke because I wouldn't have slept that night.
yeah, I remember you woke up to about 10 plus texts from me because I was freaking out and I didn't go to bed until like 5 a.m. But look, I tweeted this out earlier today and I get it. I know there probably aren't many Southern Miss slash Dallas Maverick fan hybrids out there. Um, but I tweeted this out earlier today. When you've gone through something like what we went through with that Luca trade earlier this year, I think it was February 1st is when it happened, February 1st or 2nd. When you go through something like that, stuff like this, like where, the head football coach is leaving, uh, it still hurts. But when you when when
But we
the
saw it
when
coming, though.
when the
Like,
face of your franchise, who is arguably at the time, arguably, a top three player in the league, uh, probably the best offensive player in the league,
yes,
gets traded for pennies on the dollar, it doesn't get much worse than that. So, you're kind of numb to everything else bad that happens to any other of your sports teams after that. So,
yeah,
it softened the blow a little bit.
yeah. Well, I will say this. You know, having witnessed the Calipari exodus in Memphis, and then the Luka Doncic fiasco, I've been numb for a while. It I don't know. I get excited, but I don't get too excited anymore. Maybe it's just from my past employment. I don't know, but
Well,
you know,
that's a good thing for analysis too, I think, in my
yeah.
opinion.
Well, what I'm going to say is the sun's going to rise again in Hattiesburg, but like you kept saying, we've got to make a move sooner rather than later. Whatever you do it fast.
That's right. Yeah, and I think we'll be all right. I'm not gonna predict anything, but I do think we'll be all right. I have faith in McLean and even like Joe Paul. I mentioned him getting involved if he needs to. I have faith in these people who lead our program, lead our university to make the right decisions going forward. It took it took something really unprecedented, really, in going and getting Coach Huff to turn this thing around. You've seen the benefits of that. You got to stay aggressive and do it again, in my opinion. So
Yep.
I get it. You may love Blake Anderson. He's got previous history with the university. Keep him on staff if he'll stay on staff. I just I don't think that's the move. And maybe these people are way more qualified to make those decisions than I am. That's just how I feel about it as a fan and somebody watching from afar. So we'll see how it goes. Again, we want to thank Coach Huff for everything he did for this program. Super nice guy. I mean, we never got to talk to him personally. We were planning on having him on sometime before the bowl game or maybe even after the season. But once this came up, it was like, oh well, I guess that's not happening now. Well,
Yeah.
we but look, I mean, he great guy. I mean, I think he's going to do good things at Memphis, and he's got a great family too. So I mean, he did what he was hired to do, and I can't thank him enough. It turned out exactly how I thought it was. Which look, before the season started, I was predicting 7 or 8 wins, and I thought we'd make a bowl game. Now, I didn't think it would be 7-2 and then lose the last three. Timing of all this is what makes it so hard to a tough pill to swallow,
Mhm.
because if you spread out the losses and along the season and you finish, like, say you're 5-5 and then you win your last two and you finish 7-5 and make a bowl game, people are way more happy than how things went. But because you went 7-2, expectations were raised. And because the expectations were raised and then you didn't meet those expectations, that's why there was some disappointment in the fan base. So I get it, but overall he did what he was hired to do. He turned around the program and now he's got uh, what he thinks is, a job upgrade, and really it is from a resource standpoint. Um, going from Southern Miss to Memphis. So thank you, Coach Huff. We appreciate everything you did, and thank you to all of you who have come in and listened to every one of these podcasts we've done over the last several months. Having a great time doing it. As soon as we know something about this, coaching search that's going to ensue now, we will come back on here and talk about that. We're going to come back on here next week and we'll have a little bit more basketball talk. As the season progresses, I look forward to being at Reed Green Coliseum Monday night with when the men's basketball team, they have a rematch with Grambling State. They lost at Grambling, um, single digits last time they played them, so they owe them one. So we'll see how that one goes. But guys, look, we appreciate y'all coming in and listening. Be sure to go like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We're on Substack as well. And again, if you want 20% off of your entire purchase on USM merch, go to thetopmerch.shopify.com and use our promo code NastyBunchPod. And again, that'll get you 20% off. And they have some awesome stuff.
Yeah,
I
I
wear one
actually
of
got a
those
box
hats.
for today.
I'm not wearing it right now because I've been around the house doing stuff today, in the house doing stuff today, and I haven't gone out. Every time I go out, I'm wearing one of those hats that I got. So
Dude,
it's
Austin
great.
sent me one of those corduroy ones. I gotta send you my haul from over there.
Do
Austin got
it.
me right. Yeah, I'll send you.
Shout out to Austin Pardon. He
Yeah,
is. We went to school with Austin. He's a great dude. Love that guy.
AT Tornado, baby.
Dude, I've loved To the Top merch since its inception. I didn't know that was him doing that up until the last month or so. And so when I found that out, I was just like, dude, this is awesome. And so we had to collab and get a get one of the promo setups and all that, and we'll see where it goes from there. But man, it was great to reconnect with him. But guys, again, we appreciate it. Hope y'all have a great rest of your weekend. And we will see you next week. And hopefully, we'll have some head coaching news for the football team. If not, we'll just recap, what's going on with basketball. And then we will know what bowl game the football team will be going to and who they'll be playing by this time next week, or really early next week. So we appreciate it. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.